A very good evening and welcome to another brand new episode of Law and Order. And in today's order of business, we're going to talk about something that has become very timely, something that is very close to the heart of the hard-working citizens of Sri Lanka. On today's episode, the focus would be on the labor law reforms. So to discuss all of these issues with us, we have an expert lawyer with us who has experience in labor law, industry relations and employment. He was a state counsel, former director general of Employers Federation of Ceylon, senior legal counsel, attorney at law, Kanishka Veerasinghe. Very good evening to you, sir.
Thank
and
you.
Welcome back to Law and Order.
Thank you very much, Gihan, and thank you Channel Live for inviting me back again, and Gihan and Mr. Tushan Jayasuriya for bringing me back. Thank you very much.
Now, labor law has become quite a headline in the past few months as well. And in respect to labor law, what are the areas, especially with regard to labor law reforms, what are the areas that need immediate attention?
Thank you very much. Much needs to be done, because if you look at our labor laws, they go back decades, and and also the number of labor laws that are there, Gihan. If you were to ask me a question, and you'll be surprised and sometimes even flabbergasted to say this, there are 68 labor laws in this country, right? But only a handful are relevant, right? The Shop and Office Act and a few others. So there is a I would say a need to relook at the labor laws and bring them forward to keep up with the requirements of society in today's context. After all, we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and also the technological development that is associated with it, and also to look at maybe codifying our laws so that people, our own citizens as well as anyone investing, will be able to be very comfortable to and comprehend our laws easily. So these are some of the issues that we are grappling with. One is archaic set of labor laws that we have, and we are talking about, we call the Gratuity Act, which was the last major enactment that was labor enactment that was brought in. That was in 1983.
No.
Right, that was a law, and other laws are even precede that 5-6 decades back, and we have ordinances that are going on. So and that's a long time. So I think we need to look at some of these things, but take forward the good principles that were encapsulated in those labor laws, but at the same time make it a bit modern and also easy to comprehend. One of the things that we need to look at initially, I would say, from a personal point of view, is the codification. That is to simplify the labor laws and bring it into a situation where the citizens of the country, and also importantly the people whom we are looking at as investing in our country, could understand. Because unless that is done, we need to look at this process from a very holistic point of view. Now Nepal is considered as having codified their laws in 2017, and that's considered as a good example, and that's a good example, a good way to go about, and that actually brought certain matters that were contentious, and they took away the contentions and actually made it a well balanced codification of laws, looking after the interests of all parties. Because when you talk about labor laws, it should not only be for investors or employers, it should be a well balanced system where you also look after the welfare of employees and their concerns. So and this has to be a modern process. And when you talk about a modern process, what comes to my mind is, apart from codification, the speedy justice. People look for speedier justice, and that's something that we need to look at very soon, as where the employment and labor laws are concerned, because there have been situations where there has been delays in appeals. So right now personally I would like to see the labor tribunals or the presidents of the labor tribunals also being given an opportunity to hear appeals, and maybe establish high courts which hear labor appeals separately, to establish a separate high court, so that that jurisdiction can be established and the speedy justice can be meted to the litigants, both employers as well as employees. So that's a crying need. I think in doing that we will also have to look at expanding the jurisdiction of the LTs, the labour tribunals, as well as the powers of the labour tribunal presidents, and also look at the Industrial Disputes Act, which focuses on preventing industrial disputes, and to strengthen the labour department and the capacity of the labour department to prevent disputes, not to sort of address them after they come up. That is also an important process, but to try and strengthen to prevent disputes. How do you do that? Now, we also have a system of conciliation, but can we do a bit more, because the statute itself it talks about prevention of disputes, whether we can have separate departments or divisions only focusing on mediation and conciliation. Like I can tell you a good example is South Africa. In fact, some years ago I was part of a delegation, government delegation, state delegation, tripartite delegation, which looked at some of these things in South Africa, and we found that the South African system was excellent. So they had specialists in preventing disputes, specialists in mediating disputes and conciliation, and then also adjudication of disputes. So that's a very system that has to be again looked at very holistically.
Yes, so definitely a lot of facets to be looked at in terms of bringing in reformations to the labour law. Yeah. Now, something that is very important when we talk about the economy of the country is its workforce. Yeah. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, we have an ageing population. It was around 9% in 2019, and as per the Asian Development Bank statistics, by 2015 it's going to increase up to 18%. Now, if we look at the aging population, it has a lot of repercussions, such as it affects the growth of the country, fiscal implications on pension and other healthcare costs as well. Now, if we look at this, how can we actually address this issue of the demographic dividend?
Thank you very much for that question, because as you mentioned, it has to be looked at a dividend, because we have a demography of different diversity. We also have the younger youth that are trying to come into the labour market, and they have their own aspirations, and they bring in a lot of new thinking. But yes, what do we do with the ageing population and the older population who have a lot of competencies, right, and experience? How do we harness them? So I think again, Gihan, I think there has to be a balance as to how we look at things. Now, currently I would not, I say this without prejudice to the government's proposal. They have proposed retirement age for the private sector, but then aren't you assuming that every employee has to be offered permanent employment? Now, the private sector doesn't work that way. Right? We have different types of employment, different contracts of employment. Yes, we do have permanent employment, but that is decided, those retirement, currently the retirement age is decided by the parties, the employer and the employee, and the employer decides on a policy basis, looking at the employer's ability to sustain a business, continue its business, and then we set the retirement age. So I don't think we should take away that prerogative from the employer, because they do it in consultation with the employee, and importantly they look at the ability of their businesses or their enterprise. So this should not be taken away from the employer, and also we should not be straitjacketing employers to say, okay, you should only offer permanent employment. I don't think that's a solution that will work. But what we can do is to encourage employers to harness the experience and the skills of the aging population who might retire, but who might be still in a position to contribute to the organizations. Currently, employers are doing some good work in this area. They are offering new employment, sometimes retaining them in different positions, because I don't think you can expect someone to continue in the same position, especially in a higher position, for long, because once you pass the age of retirement, sometimes even your thoughts might be a bit not in line with what's going on in the modern era. And also we need to look at balancing the youth aspirations, because currently Sri Lanka, remember, has a problem with regard to youth unemployment. We have a very high, before the pandemic we had an unemployment rate of 19% amongst youth. Amongst females it was even higher. Female young employees, it was 26%. And remember, Sri Lanka also has another problem of women participation. Women participation is one of the lowest when you consider the region. It's at 34%. So I think we need to look at, you were mentioning about the labor law reforms, and this is very much part of it. You need to be holistic. You have to think of creating opportunities for employment, not the other way around, right? How do we employ? Sometimes there could be self-employment, sometimes there could be different situations where we might be able to harness that experience and the resources of the older population as they move out of the formal tenures of employment. But one thing we need to inculcate as a society is dignity of labor, because I don't think even I can expect to be a CEO after 60 or maybe 55. I think I should be able to move on and also do something with my skills, and the employer should be encouraged to harness those skills. Maybe cross utilization of maybe retiring public sector employees in the private sector, or maybe vice versa. These are things that we have to think of. And do we give fiscal incentives for employers to keep employees, or maybe re-engage them in different forms? I think these are some of the things that we have to think of.
Now, if we talk about, we've spoken about the problems in connection to the workforce we have. Let's also talk about the solutions. What are the kind of solutions that are proposed to contend these issues? Are there technology-based solutions coming up?
I think so. I think we have to look at technology and also skills of employees. Now, one of the recent initiatives that we at the Employers Federation before I left took was to link the certification of skills, because currently we are Sri Lanka, the majority when investors, even investors come, when they used to meet us, they say, look, we see a lack of skills here. But it's not I don't think it's a lack of skills. It's a case of harnessing that resources and saying, okay, certifying those skills. Because if you look at Mason Barsers, I mean, I'm talking about the Mason Barsers and people like that even. Now, they have so much of experience. Now, you take the machine operators who are working in manufacturing firms. They have numbers of years of experience, but their skills have not been harnessed. We still go on the basis of an archaic standardization of skills, saying they are you're unskilled, semi-skilled and skilled. That's a very demeaning way of I think identifying the skills of our employees. I think we should focus on the national vocational qualifications and the national qualification framework, and encourage every employer and employee to get certified in their skills. Now, the Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission is having a program, and we even supported a concept. In fact, we introduced it. The employers introduced the concept of a skills passport, where you have one database in the Ministry of Skills. The Tertiary Vocational Education Commission is the owner of that database, where everybody gets certified in their skills, right? And then you don't even have to carry all your certificates around. You just have a small card. You can take it, and at every interview you can produce it. Employer just swipes it in their system, and they immediately get connected to the database in the skills ministry. Right? That way they can assess the skills, the latest skills of that employee. It gives them an opportunity to grow and sort of grow in their skills and get higher certifications. And the skills passport also had two other components: reciprocal recognition in different countries, where the same skill is recognized in the same way, because we have international standards. If you look at ASEAN and if you look at the GCC, it's the same. So, of course, there has to be reciprocal understanding between governments that they will do that. Now, currently the ASEAN countries are having a program. I think we can easily plug into that system. It will be good for our employees, and also language skills. So, I think the way forward is to link even wages to skills, and that's a way of getting higher productivity and also encouraging better wages for employees, because I don't think any employer will be hesitant to pay higher wages to a skilled employee.
Exactly. Like you mentioned, I think there is a mismatch between the skills required by employers and the skills that are currently possessed by the graduates. So definitely, like you mentioned, some of these initiatives you mentioned, I believe would definitely come into play and would be very beneficial.
Yeah, and also on that, I think there's a great onus on employers also to transfer their technology to the universities as well as the places where people are educated in skills, right? Like Vocational Training Authority, because if you don't pass on that knowledge and don't pass on that technological improvement that has taken place in industry, the educators will not know. So that's why we, our system also expects there is a system in place where people are supposed to establish skills councils, and there should be a greater focus or cooperation between employers and the providers of skills.
Yes, I have a follow-up question to that. We talk about technology being passed over, as you said, like it's the onus of the corporations as well to pass it on. But something we've seen throughout the globe is that with the evolution of technology, certain jobs become obsolete, certain jobs become automated. So that risk is also there when we talk about automation. We talk about technology like artificial intelligence, big data analytics coming into play. So in that context, should Sri Lanka also be looking at these kind of things like artificial intelligence and invest into these tech-savvy aspects as well?
That was yesterday. So definitely yes, because the requirement was yesterday, because industrial revolution has already caught up with us, and including the technology revolution. It's there in all sectors. It's not only in the service sector, it's in the manufacturing sector. And I mean, since I have been involved in discussions with at different international levels, I can say that some of our colleagues, especially the worker colleagues, are a bit hesitant when it comes to technology. They are very concerned about the loss of jobs. But I think there's a responsibility on the part of governments as well as the employers to also take this the other employees into the next level. That's why I say there has to be, of course, there might have to be fiscal incentives to be passed on to the employers as well, to encourage them to retrain and reskill some of these majority of these employees to take up these higher skilled jobs. Because if we don't embrace, now Sri Lanka, as you mentioned earlier, has an aging population, and we don't have we are a typical how should I say, even our traditional care system is not there, where your children look after you and things like that. So that is also changing. So I think even for caregiving, technology matters a lot, right? And also even things like that. I mean, there are new jobs that are coming up. There are lots of young people joining the caregiving sector, but I see a requirement to standardize that sector and also maybe pass on technology related standards, so that they also consider that as a good job. It's not something that they go for just because of the pay. It has to be something that people should be encouraged to take up. So there are new jobs coming up, even in the geriatric care. In the manufacturing, you talked about artificial intelligence, about the importance of data. These are new opportunities actually, and it need not be a younger person, right? That's the beauty of it. You are educated, you have experience. I think you are capable of assimilating knowledge and also immediately contributing to what you have into these systems. So I think that should be encouraged.
When we look at the globe, it's not just like you mentioned, artificial intelligence is not limited to certain industries, because we see it even being used in things like agriculture.
Of course.
Now Sri Lanka speaks a lot about agriculture, and the focus is on agriculture as well in most of the cases. So how do we bring in technology to agriculture? Are there any plans to look at industries such as agriculture and introduce technology into it?
I think we are starting to look at agriculture in that way. I mean, it's a bit of controversial, but the shift from the chemical fertilizer to organic, it should have been done some years ago actually. Maybe there should have been a transition, but that's a good thing. And with that, there's a lot of impetus in relation to using technology to grow organic and to do things organic. And also we need to use, I think our country loses a lot in relation to food, especially the fresh products, because of perishing. They say 40% of the harvest is lost because of perishing and due to transport. How do you reduce that? There are a lot of companies looking at that. I think technology can be used to sort of ensure that that percentage is reduced, so that we enhance food security and also don't throw out what we grow. 40% is a lot, right? So that's a worrying trend. So we need to arrest those things. I think technology can be harvested in the sense used in improving those situations, and also renewable energy. I think it's a huge thing that we are now finally looking at targets with regard to renewable energy. I think we should pursue, and we should support the policymakers in implementing that.
Yes, we spoke about agriculture, we spoke about renewable energy.
Yeah.
Now, how do we get global giants to come and invest in Sri Lanka? Does relaxing the labour laws going to help it? Is that a way that we can look at in terms of getting the investments needed to explore these avenues?
I wouldn't call it relaxing. I think we need to look at our labour laws in a way that it facilitates employment, creation of employment and productivity. There has to be a link immediately. If you do that, then I think it's a case of, and also good practices. You need to have good practices as well, because it's not only about relaxing labour laws and ensuring that only one side gets the benefit. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance, and employee welfare also has to be taken note of. I think the Labour Minister himself was talking about a proposal to have a social security policy, which encompasses, maybe you take out the Termination Act and some of the compensation formulas and covers social security. Remember, we also have certain deficits in our laws where, for example, maternity benefits. The ILO conventions require that the employer should not only be burdened with maternity benefits. Currently 100% of the maternity benefits are I would say spent by the employer, whereas that burden is required to be lessened. So maybe the establishment of a social security fund could also address issues like that. So I think that's a good thing, and that will be a solution for the aging population as well, because if you have a good social security system, people will be less reluctant to suddenly move away from employment, or they will be encouraged to continue in the labour market and so on.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing your comments with us. So today the focus was on the labour law reforms. We touched on areas of laws on how to create more jobs, how to expedite the judicial process, how to promote productivity while ensuring the employee welfare and social security are maintained as well. So with us, we had an expert on the subject to talk to us, Attorney at Law Kanishka Veerasinghe. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise and experiences on industrial law and labour law with us. Thank you very much, sir. So with that, we would be winding up today's session. Hope to see you all at the next session.
Thank you.